I stood in my downtown Seattle office early Monday morning, watching rain slide down the tall glass windows while my sister's words replayed over and over in my head. The pharmaceutical company I had spent 7 years building filled 3 entire floors of the building. Every hallway, office, and lab space stood as proof of sacrifice, late nights, and choices that had slowly cost me friendships and relationships. My beach house in Cannon Beach, Oregon, was meant to be my escape. It was the one place where the constant pressure of producing life-saving medications disappeared into ocean air and the steady sound of waves. "I'm moving in on Wednesday afternoon," Victoria had announced the day before at brunch, tapping her perfectly shaped nails against her mimosa glass. "Dad already gave me the final approval." My father sat beside her, staring down at the table, avoiding my eyes the same way he always had. After a moment, he nodded slowly, that familiar look of indulgence settling across his worn face. Victoria was 41, 12 years older than me, and she had used those extra years to master manipulation. She smiled at me then, that charming smile that had persuaded our father to bankroll her boutique clothing store, her yoga studio, and her artisanal candle business. Every one of them had collapsed within months. "Alexandra built that house herself," I remembered saying quietly, referring to myself in the third person the way I did when anger threatened to take over. "She designed it, paid for it, and earned every dollar that went into it." Dad waved his hand as if brushing away the facts. "Family shares, sweetheart. You already have so much. Your sister needs stability right now. Her marriage just ended and she needs a calm place to recover." Victoria's third marriage had ended, yes, but from what I had heard through mutual friends, she was the one who walked away. Her husband had finally had enough of supporting her endless projects and her lack of direction. Now she wanted my beach house, the $2 million property I had bought 18 months earlier as a reward after a brutal year spent navigating FDA approvals and endless pharmaceutical regulations. I turned away from the window and pulled out my phone. The security system I installed 3 months ago was top of the line. I added it after Victoria casually mentioned at Christmas dinner that she often drove down to Cannon Beach to check on my place. I later found proof of her visits: empty wine bottles in the recycling bin, towels I didn't recognize in the bathroom, my expensive skincare products nearly used up. She still had a key from when I had foolishly trusted her to water my plants during a tow trip to Switzerland for a medical conference. I opened the security app and started programming. Wednesday morning, 6 a.m., the system would fully activate. Motion detection, trespass recording, automatic police alerts. My fingers moved fast across the screen as I set zones, adjusted sensitivity, and locked in response protocols. The house would become a legal fortress, protecting my property with clear, documented proof of unauthorized entry. Tuesday came with its usual rush of production meetings and quality control reviews. We were 3 weeks away from launching a new anti-inflammatory medication, and every single detail demanded my focus. In the conference room, my lead researcher, Bethany, walked us through the latest data. I split my attention between her presentation and my phone, where the final security calibrations were still running. "Are you expecting trouble?" Bethany asked during a short break, noticing my distraction. I looked up at her concerned face. "Family trouble," I said. "The kind that needs documentation." She nodded without pressing further. Bethany had worked with me for 5 years. She had seen enough of my family interactions at company events to understand. My father had attended our last product launch and spent the entire evening praising Victoria's so-called entrepreneurial spirit to investors, barely mentioning the company I had built from nothing. That night, I drove back to my Seattle apartment and packed a small bag. Wednesday would require me to be in Cannon Beach, just not in the way Victoria expected. I had reserved a room at a small inn 2 miles from my house. It had reliable Wi-Fi and a clear signal, which was all I needed. I plan to watch everything unfold from a safe distance, with proof and legality on my side. Near midnight, my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. Alexandra, honey, you need to give Victoria the new security code, he said immediately. She's worried you might have changed things. The house is mine, Dad, I replied calmly. I never agreed to this. He let out a long sigh, heavy with years of disappointment. Why do you always have to be so difficult? Your sister is struggling. You have more than enough. That pharmaceutical company of yours is worth millions. Exactly, I said quietly. It's worth millions because I built it, just like I bought that house with my own money. Family helps family, Alexandra. I thought I raised you better than this selfishness. I ended the call without another word. Sleep came in broken pieces, filled with old memories I had tried to bury. Victoria borrowing my car in college and returning it with a smashed fender, never once apologizing. Victoria staying temporarily in my first apartment and leaving with my jewelry and my boyfriend. Victoria convincing Dad to invest his retirement savings into her businesses, promising profits that never came. Wednesday morning arrived cold and gray. I left Seattle at 5 a.m., driving south through steady rain that matched my mood. Right on schedule, the security system activated at 6 a.m. My phone confirmed the house was locked down and fully monitored. Every door and window was armed. Every room was under surveillance. The cameras were discreet but thorough, positioned to capture any attempt to enter the property. I checked into the Cannon Beach Inn at 9 a.m., taking the key from a friendly front desk clerk who commented casually on the weather. My room didn't face the ocean, but the Wi-Fi signal was strong and reliable. I sat down in the desk chair, connected my laptop, and opened the security system's full control panel. Several screens filled my display, each showing a different angle of my house: the front entrance with its custom driftwood door, the back deck overlooking the beach, the living room framed by floor-to-ceiling windows, the kitchen finished with imported Italian tile. Everything looked exactly the way I had left it 2 weeks earlier during my last visit. The furniture I had chosen carefully, the artwork I had commissioned from local artists, the kitchen tools I had splurged on during a brief phase when I believed I might finally learn how to cook properly. Every piece represented a decision, a milestone, a small reward earned through the relentless demands of running a pharmaceutical company. My phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. Running a bit late. Traffic was worse than expected. Should be there by 2 p.m. So excited to finally have some peace and quiet. I stared at the screen, taking in the assumption behind her words. No question, no discussion. Just certainty that my home already belonged to her. That had always been the pattern. Dad had taught us well. Victoria learned to expect. I learned to give. Except the last 7 years had been spent unlearning that lesson. I had built a company that answered to no one but me and the patients who relied on our medications. The morning dragged on. I worked from my laptop, reviewing production timelines and responding to emails. Bethany sent updates on our formulation testing. Our chief financial officer forwarded next quarter's projections. My assistant reminded me of a meeting with potential investors scheduled for Friday. Business moved forward as usual while my personal crisis waited in the background. At 1:30 p.m., movement appeared on one of the security screens. It wasn't Victoria's car. It was a moving truck. I leaned closer as the truck pulled into my driveway. 2 men climbed out. Then Victoria stepped down behind them, dressed in designer athletic wear that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She waved her arms animatedly, pointing at my house, clearly giving instructions on where things should go. My grip tightened on the laptop. She hadn't just planned to stay. She had hired movers. She had brought furniture. This wasn't a short visit during a hard time. This was a full takeover. I grabbed my phone and began recording the security footage, creating a backup that couldn't be deleted. Victoria walked up to the front door and reached into her purse for what I assumed was the old key. She slid it into the lock and turned it. Nothing happened. She tried again, shaking the key harder this time. The camera captured her expression as confidence shifted to confusion, then irritation. She pulled out her phone. Mine rang seconds later. I declined the call. It rang again. I declined it again. A text followed. Alexandra, the key isn't working. Did you change the locks? Very funny. Let me in now. On the screen, she paced across my front deck, phone pressed to her ear. I was certain she was calling Dad. The movers stood nearby, clearly unsure. One checked his watch. They were paid by the hour, and this delay was costing someone money. Most likely Victoria, who probably didn't have the funds to burn on extended moving time. Another text arrived. This is ridiculous. Dad told you to cooperate. I'm calling a locksmith. I took a breath and typed my reply. That house is private property. Any attempt to enter without permission will be treated as criminal trespassing. The property is fully monitored, and law enforcement will be notified automatically. 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Finally, a reply came. You can't be serious. Dad gave me permission. Dad doesn't own the house. I do. Leave immediately. I watched her read the message. Confusion turned into fury. She stormed back to the door and slammed her fist against it, yelling something the microphones didn't catch, but didn't need to. The movers exchanged uneasy looks. Moments later, Dad's name flashed on my phone. This time, I answered. Alexandra Morin, what is this nonsense? His voice carried the same sharp edge that used to make me apologize for simply existing. Your sister is standing outside in the cold, and you changed the locks like a spiteful child. I'm protecting my property from unauthorized access. She's your sister. I told her she could stay there. You have no right to deny her basic kindness. I have every right. It's my house. My name is on the deed. My money paid for it. After everything this family has done for you? What has this family done for me, Dad? I cut in, watching Victoria wave her arms wildly at the movers. Was it when you gave Victoria my college fund because her business needed capital? Was it when you skipped my graduate school graduation because she was having a crisis? Or when you told investors at my company launch that my success was just good luck and family values? Silence filled the line. On my screen, Victoria sank down onto my front steps, her head buried in her hands. The movers retreated toward their truck, clearly reconsidering their involvement. You've become hard, Dad said at last. Money has made you cruel. No, I replied calmly. Boundaries have made me sane. Victoria needs to leave my property now, or I will call the police myself. I ended the call. Victoria stayed on the steps for another 10 minutes, alternating between phone calls and staring at the door as if sheer will might open it. Eventually, the movers approached her. I could tell from their body language the discussion wasn't going well. One pointed at his watch, then at the truck. They needed an answer. Victoria stood abruptly and walked to the truck, reaching inside. She came back carrying a small bag, something like an overnight case. My chest tightened. She wasn't giving up. She placed the bag on the deck and began circling the house, checking windows. Every window was locked. Every one was monitored. She pulled on the sliding door at the back deck. It didn't move. I activated the audio feed and turned on the two-way speaker through the doorbell camera. Victoria returned to the front door, phone in hand, probably messaging Dad again. I pressed the speaker. This is your final warning, Victoria. You are trespassing on private property. Leave now or law enforcement will be contacted automatically in 60 seconds. Her head snapped up. She searched for the sound, then spotted the camera and stepped directly in front of it. You're really doing this? She shouted. You're really going to call the cops on your own sister? I'm protecting my property from someone who was never invited and refuses to respect boundaries. Dad invited me. He has every right. Dad has no rights to this property. None. Zero. This house is in my name only. I paid for it. I maintain it. And you were never given permission to stay here. You were absolutely never given permission to move in with furniture. Her face twisted with rage. You think you're better than everyone because you have money. You've always been selfish and superior. I think I'm someone who worked for what I have and is done watching others try to take it. By then, the movers had climbed back into their truck. They pulled away slowly, leaving Victoria alone in my driveway with her overnight bag. She watched them disappear, then turned back to the camera. "I have nowhere to go," she said. Her voice shifted. The anger drained away, replaced by pleading. It was the version of herself she had perfected over 4 decades. "My marriage ended. I'm broke. I just need time to figure things out." "You have so much, Alexandra. Can't you share just this one thing?" I watched her face on the screen, remembering 100 similar moments. Victoria asking to borrow money she never repaid. Victoria needing just a small favor that always cost me more than promised. Victoria explaining why. Her needs trumped mine, always backed by Dad's agreement that family meant sacrifice. Specifically, my sacrifice for her benefit. "You're not broke," I said calmly. "You received a substantial settlement from your divorce. I know because your ex-husband mentioned it when he called, to apologize for anything Victoria might try to pull. He warned me you'd been talking about my beach house for months." Her expression flickered, caught in the lie. "You chose to spend that settlement on luxury goods instead of securing stable housing," I continued. "You chose to tell Dad a story that would make him pressure me. You chose to hire movers and plan a permanent takeover of my property. Without my consent. Those were your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." "What am I supposed to do?" she demanded, the pleading voice dropping back into anger. "Where am I supposed to go?" "You have options. You can rent an apartment with the money you still have. You can get a job and support yourself like the adult you are. You can stop expecting other people to subsidize your lifestyle choices." Victoria grabbed her overnight bag and hurled it at the front door. It bounced off harmlessly, falling onto the deck. She followed it with a string of curses, most of them variations on my selfishness and cruelty. I recorded everything, watching her rage play out across my security feeds. My phone rang. Again. Dad's number. I let it go to voicemail. He called twice more, then gave up. A text arrived minutes later. "I'm ashamed of you. Your mother would be. Heartbroken to see what you've become. That particular weapon had lost its edge years ago. My mother had died when I was 15. Too early to see me build anything. Too early to witness Victoria's pattern of destruction. Dad liked to invoke her memory whenever he wanted me to feel guilty, but the truth was that Mom had been the one person who encouraged my ambitions, who told me that taking care of myself was not selfish, but necessary. Victoria made one final circuit of the house, checking every potential entry point. She tried the garage door, tested the windows again, even attempted to remove a screen to see if any window had been left. Unlocked. Every access point held firm. Finally, she returned to the front deck, collected her thrown overnight bag, and pulled out her phone. She ordered a ride share, I assumed, because she stood there waiting for 15 minutes before a car arrived. Before she left, she turned to face the camera. One last time. "You'll regret this," she said coldly. "Dad will never forgive you. I'll make sure everyone knows how you abandoned family when they needed you most. I'll take that risk, I replied through the speaker. Goodbye, Victoria. She climbed into the ride-share vehicle and disappeared down the road. I watched until the car vanished completely, then leaned back in my desk chair and released a breath I had not realized I was holding. My hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline and relief mixing in my bloodstream. The house remained secure, untouched, mine. The security system had documented everything. Victoria's arrival, her. Attempts at entry, her rage, her threats. Evidence existed now, concrete and irrefutable proof that I had not imagined the patterns I had spent years trying to escape. The rest of Wednesday passed in strange calm that felt almost surreal. I remained at the inn, monitoring the security feeds and handling work emails, watching my house stand empty and protected. By evening, I drove down to a small restaurant near the beach and ordered fish tacos, eating slowly while rain drummed against the windows. My phone stayed silent. Dad did not call again, and Victoria sent no more messages. Thursday morning, I woke to 17 missed calls, all from Dad's number starting at 6 a.m. The voicemail indicator showed 6 new messages. I listened to them. While drinking coffee from the inn's small breakfast area, watching locals and tourists navigate the gray morning. The first message was Dad's voice, tight with barely controlled anger. Alexandra, call me immediately. Your sister spent the night in a hotel she cannot afford, and this is your fault. The second escalated. I've spoken to your Aunt Patricia. She agrees this. Behavior is unacceptable. Family does not abandon family. By the sixth message, his tone had shifted to disappointment. Your mother raised you better than this. I don't know what happened to the generous daughter I once knew. I deleted all 6 messages and called my attorney instead. Jeffrey had handled the purchase of my beach house and had been my legal counsel for the pharmaceutical company since its inception. He answered on the second ring. I need to document a potential harassment situation, I said, explaining the previous day's events. Jeffrey listened without interruption, then asked pointed questions about the security footage, the text messages, and my father's calls. You've done everything correctly, he finally said. Your property rights are absolute. But Alexandra, be prepared for escalation. People who feel entitled rarely accept initial rejection gracefully. What kind of escalation? Social media campaigns, family pressure, potential attempts to claim squatters' rights if she manages entry, accusations. That could damage your business reputation. Your sister sounds like someone who fights dirty when cornered. I thanked him and ended the call, his warnings echoing in my mind. By noon, the social media campaign had begun. Victoria posted a lengthy message on her public accounts, carefully worded to paint me as a heartless corporate executive who had turned away her desperate sister during a vulnerable time. She mentioned my pharmaceutical company by name, suggesting that I valued profit over people, business over family. Comments flooded in, sympathetic strangers offering Victoria's support and condemnation of my cruelty. This house is half mine now, and you can't do anything about it. I was already calling Jeffrey hands, shaking as I navigated my phone. He answered immediately, and I explained Victoria's claim. She's lying, Jeffrey said firmly. Adding someone to a property deed requires the owner's signature, not a family member's permission. Your father cannot unilaterally change ownership of your house. She's bluffing to scare you into backing down. You're certain? Absolutely certain. This is manipulation, not law. Tell her she has 60 seconds to leave, then call the Cannon Beach police. I returned to the security feed where Victoria was now testing the sliding door's lock. Victoria, Dad cannot add you to my property deed. He doesn't own the house. You're lying and you're trespassing. You have 60 seconds to leave before police arrive. You're bluffing, she shouted at the camera. You won't actually call the cops on your own sister. I was already dialing the Cannon Beach Police emergency line, watching Victoria on my screen while explaining the situation to the dispatcher. The officer I had spoken with earlier must have flagged my address because the dispatcher's response was immediate. We have units in the area. They'll be there within 5 minutes. She's testing windows now, I reported, watching Victoria circle my house, searching for any weakness. She's attempting to force entry. Ma'am, please stay on the line and continue documenting her actions. The police arrived in 3 minutes. 2. Vehicles with lights, but no sirens. I watched through multiple camera feeds. As 2 officers approached the back deck, where Victoria was now attempting to pry open a window with what looked like a screwdriver. She did not notice them until one called out, identifying themselves as law enforcement. Victoria spun around, and I watched her expression shift rapidly through several emotions: shock, fear, then sudden tears. She dropped the screwdriver and covered her face with her hands, her shoulders, shaking with what appeared to be sobs. I had seen this performance before, the instant transformation into helpless victim. Officers, thank goodness you're here, she called out, voice breaking convincingly. My sister locked me out of our family property. I've been trying to get my belongings, but she changed all the locks. I didn't know what else to do. One officer approached her cautiously while the other surveyed the property. Ma'am, the owner of this property called us. She states, you don't have permission to be here. The owner is my sister, and she's being vindictive because of a family disagreement. Our father gave me permission to stay. Here, this is a family matter, not a police matter. I spoke through the doorbell camera. Speaker, my voice calm and clear. Officers, I'm the sole owner of this property. I'm currently in Seattle, but monitoring my security system. This woman is my sister, Victoria, and she has no legal claim to this house. She attempted to move in last Wednesday without permission, and I denied her entry. She's now attempting forced entry, which I've documented on video. The officer looked up at the camera, nodding slightly. Ma'am, can you provide proof of ownership? I'll email copies of the deed, property tax records, and mortgage documentation to your department immediately. My attorneys. Contact information is Jeffrey Morrison at Morrison Legal Group in Seattle. He can verify everything. Victoria's tears intensified. This is ridiculous. She's my sister. Why are you treating me like a criminal? Ma'am, do you have documentation showing permission to be on this property? The second officer asked, circling back from his inspection of the attempted break-in. Points. My father gave verbal permission. He's part owner of the family. Is his name on the deed? Victoria hesitated. No, but then he cannot grant permission for access. The officer's tone remained professional but firm. Do you have keys provided by the actual owner? I have keys. Victoria pulled a keyring from her pocket triumphantly. See, I have keys to this house. Those keys don't work anymore, I said through the speaker. I changed the locks 3 months ago after discovering she had been entering my property without permission and using my belongings. The keys she's holding are obsolete, which is why she was attempting to pry open a window. The officer who had been examining the window frames spoke up. There are fresh marks here consistent with forced entry attempts. Ma'am, I need you to come with me to the patrol car while we sort this out. I'm not going anywhere. This is my family's property. Ma'am, you can come voluntarily or I can place you under arrest for attempted breaking and entering. Your choice. I watched Victoria's face on the camera as reality penetrated her fantasy of ownership. The tears stopped abruptly, replaced by cold calculation. She was weighing her options, trying to determine which path offered the best outcome. "I want to speak to my father," she said. Finally. "He'll straighten this out." "You're welcome to call him from the station," the officer replied. "But right now, you need to leave this property." Victoria pulled out her phone, but instead of calling Dad, she took a photo of the officers. "I'm documenting this harassment. My lawyer will be very interested in how you've treated me based on my sister's lies. Ma'am, please put your phone away and accompany us now." What happened next unfolded so quickly that I almost missed it. Victoria suddenly bolted, not toward the street, but toward the beach, apparently believing she could escape across the sand. The officers reacted immediately, one radioing for backup while the other pursued on foot. Victoria made it perhaps 50 yards before losing her footing in the soft sand and falling hard. The pursuing officer caught up quickly, and within moments Victoria was in handcuffs, screaming about police brutality and illegal arrest. I recorded everything from multiple camera angles, watching the scene play out with a strange detachment. This was my sister, the person I had grown up with, now being arrested for trying to steal my property. The second patrol car arrived, and backup officers helped escort Victoria to a vehicle. She was still shouting, her voice carrying across the beach. "Alexandra, I know you're watching. This isn't over. You can't treat family like this." One officer approached the front door camera.
"Ma'am, are you still on the line? I'm here. We're taking your sister to the
Station for booking on attempted breaking and entering, trespassing, and resisting arrest. You'll need to come too. Cannon Beach to provide a formal statement and your documentation. I can be there in 3 hours. That works. Ask for Sergeant Williams when you arrive. I was on the road within 15 minutes, throwing necessities into a bag, and heading south through evening traffic. The drive gave me time to process what had happened. Victoria had not just failed again, she had escalated into criminal behavior, creating a record that would support any future restraining orders or legal action I might need. Jeffrey called halfway through my drive. "I heard from the Cannon Beach police. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Heading down to give a statement. I've already sent them all the documentation they requested. Property deed records of Victoria's, previous unauthorized entries, the security footage from last Wednesday. They're building a solid case for prosecution if you choose to press charges. I'm pressing charges." The words came out firm, certain. This has to stop, and apparently legal consequences are the only language Victoria understands. Good. I'll meet you at the police station. Don't sign anything or agree to anything without me present. The Cannon Beach police station was small, the kind of local department that probably dealt more with tourist complaints than property crime. Sergeant Williams met me in the lobby, a weathered woman in her 50s who exuded competent authority. Jeffrey arrived moments later, and we followed her to an interview room. "Your sister is claiming this was a misunderstanding," Sergeant Williams began. "She maintains that your father gave her permission, and she believes she had legal right to access the property." "My father doesn't own any portion of the property," I replied, sliding documentation across the table. "I'm the sole owner, as shown here." Victoria knew she didn't have permission, which is why she attempted forced entry rather than simply using keys. "The keys in her possession don't work for your locks." "Correct. I changed locks 3 months ago specifically because she had been entering without permission." We spent an hour reviewing evidence, walking through the timeline of events, and documenting Victoria's escalating behavior. Sergeant Williams took notes steadily, occasionally asking clarification, questions. When we finished, she sat back in her chair. "This is clearly not a misunderstanding. Your sister knew she didn't have access rights and attempted to circumvent your security through deception and force. The question is, How do you want to proceed? Full prosecution, I said. I
Want every charge possible filed and pursued, even though she's family, especially.
Because she's family, she's used that relationship as a weapon for years, and she needs to understand that actions have consequences. Sergeant Williams nodded slowly. Will file charges for attempted burglary,
Criminal trespassing, and resisting arrest. The district attorney will contact you about proceeding with prosecution. Be aware that this will create a permanent record and could result in jail time if convicted.
I understand. After the police station, Jeffrey walked me to my car in the parking lot. You. No, Victoria will use this to paint you as even more villainous. She'll claim you had her arrested out of spite.
Let her. I have documentation, police reports, and witness statements. The
Truth is available to anyone who wants to look beyond her victim narrative. Your father called me earlier, Jeffrey, said carefully. He wanted me to convince you to drop the charges. What did you tell him? That you're my client, not him, and that you're making the right legal decision. He wasn't happy, but he accepted it. I drove to my beach house finally, parking in the driveway I had watched Victoria invade twice now. The house stood,
peaceful in the evening light, untouched and secure. I walked through each room,
slowly, checking for any damage, any sign that Victoria's attempts had succeeded. Everything remained exactly as I had left it, my furniture, my art, my sanctuary intact. That night, I slept in my own bed while waves crashed against the shore outside. The security system stayed armed,
monitoring for threats that might still come. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something like peace settling into the spaces Victoria had tried to occupy. Thursday morning brought unexpected news. Dad called at 8 a.m., his voice careful and subdued.
Victoria contacted me from jail. She needs bail money, and I waited for the request, the pressure to help family despite everything, and I told her no. I told her that she created this situation through her own choices, and she needs to face the consequences. Patricia is also refusing to help.
Victoria is going to have to use her remaining money for bail and legal defense. I'm surprised.
The words felt inadequate for the magnitude of what Dad was saying.
I
should have done this years ago, decades ago. Your mother tried to tell me, but I didn't listen. I'm listening now. Alexandra, I'm sorry it took this long. After we hung up, I sat on my deck,
watching seabirds wheel across the morning sky. The air smelled of salt and possibility.
My phone buzzed with messages from my team in Seattle. The product launch was proceeding perfectly. Early reviews were exceptional. Investors were pleased with initial market response. Life continued forward despite Victoria's attempts to derail it. My company thrived because I had built it on solid foundations, not
family obligations or borrowed success. My house stood secure because I had earned it and protected it with
boundaries. Victoria had never learned to respect. The weeks that followed Victoria's arrest brought a strange clarity to my life. The constant tension of waiting for her next attack dissolved, replaced by the simple rhythm of running my company and occasionally visiting my beach sanctuary. The legal process moved forward steadily. Victoria pleaded not guilty, claiming she had genuinely believed Dad's verbal permission granted her access rights. The district attorney, armed with my documentation and security footage, was unimpressed with her defense. Dad and I rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully. He attended a product launch event in Seattle, staying afterward to tour the facility properly for the first time. He asked intelligent questions about our research and manufacturing processes, listened to my team members describe their work, and made no mention of Victoria's achievements or needs. It was the attention I had craved for years,
arriving late, but genuine. Your mother would have loved seeing this, he said as we walked through the research labs where Bethy's team developed new formulations. She always said you had the determination to change the world. I wish I had believed her sooner. Victoria's trial was scheduled for early December. Her public defender contacted Jeffrey, too. Discuss a plea bargain. Guilty plea to criminal trespassing in exchange for dropped burglary and resisting arrest. Charges. The recommended sentence would be probation, community service, and a permanent restraining order, preventing her from coming within 500 feet of me or my properties. It's a reasonable offer, Jeffrey said during our consultation call. You'd get legal protection without the uncertainty of a trial. What's your recommendation? Accept it. You've already won what matters: clear boundaries, legal documentation of her behavior, and protection going forward, pushing for. Maximum punishment won't give you anything more valuable than what this plea provides. I accepted the plea bargain. Victoria would serve 200 hours of community service, attend mandatory counseling for boundary issues, and live with the permanent record of criminal trespassing. More importantly, the restraining order meant she could never show up at my home, my office, or my beach house. Again, legal consequences enforced what family obligation never could. The day Victoria signed the plea agreement, I received an email from Jennifer, the ex-wife who had warned me about Victoria's patterns. I heard about the criminal charges. Gregory and I are considering reopening our case against her for credit card fraud. Your documentation and successful prosecution make it more likely we'd be taken. Seriously, thank you for finally holding her accountable. I responded with encouragement and Anne offered to share any relevant evidence that might help their case. Victoria's web of victims was larger than I had realized, and each person she had exploited deserved the chance at justice and closure. By mid-December, my life had settled into a new normal. The product launch exceeded projections, securing another round of investor. Funding that would let us expand into additional therapeutic areas. I promoted Bethany to Vice President of Research, recognizing her years of dedicated work and brilliant contributions. My team gathered at a downtown Seattle restaurant to celebrate, toasting with sparkling cider and sharing stories about the challenges we had overcome together. To Alexandra, Thomas said, raising his glass, for building a company that actually gives a damn about patients, not just profits. To surviving family drama without losing your mind, Bethany added with a knowing smile. I raised my own glass, looking around at the people who had chosen to work with me, who respected what I had built, who understood that success required boundaries and principles. To all of us, to choosing the difficult, right over the easy wrong. The week before Christmas, I spent 5 days at my beach house. The weather was cold and gray, rain intermittent, tourists. Sparse, perfect conditions for solitude and reflection. I walked the beach each morning, watching waves reshape the sand, thinking about the year that had passed and the version of myself who had emerged from conflict. Victoria had tried to take what I built, using family obligation as justification for theft. She had failed because I finally understood something essential. Love without boundaries is not love, but enabling. And generosity without reciprocity is not kindness, but exploitation. Setting limits did not make me cruel. It made me sane. Dad called on Christmas Eve with news that Victoria had moved to Arizona, taking a job managing a retail store and renting a modest apartment. With her own money. She's complaining about the work and the heat, he said. But she's actually showing up to her shifts and paying her own rent. It's the first time in years she's been entirely self-sufficient. Good for her. I meant it. Victoria needed to learn. That survival required effort, not manipulation. Maybe she would figure it out. Maybe she would not. Either way, her choices were no longer my responsibility. On Christmas morning, I sat on my deck, wrapped in blankets, drinking coffee as winter sun broke through clouds over the ocean. My phone held no demands, no crises, no family members expecting me to sacrifice myself for their convenience, just quiet messages from friends, a video call scheduled with Dad for later, and the peaceful solitude I had fought to protect. Victoria faced the consequences she had spent years evading. The criminal trespassing conviction followed her into background. Checks, limiting housing options and employment opportunities. The restraining order isolated her from family members who might have helped her rebuild, forcing her to finally develop self-reliance she had never needed before. Her social media followers eventually realized her victim narrative had been constructed from lies, and her posts attracted criticism rather than sympathy. She discovered what I had learned young. The world rarely rewards manipulation once the truth comes to light. Looking back on my journey of protecting what was mine, I felt no guilt, only the quiet satisfaction of boundaries honored and justice served. I had chosen myself over family obligation, and in doing so, I had finally found the peace I deserved.